Can you guys test to make sure I can hear you?
I can hear you, Laurie. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Laurie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. You're both good. Thank you.
Okay. Danny, are you good? You're on mute, dude.
Okay, I'm not on mute.
Bob, are you good? Bob, you hear us?
Bob, you're muted.
Hey, Bob. Dave, can you still hear me? There you are, Bob. Can you hear me now, Bob?
I'm good.
Oh, okay. I have to excuse myself. I've got to log out. It connect. It connect. Be right back, everybody.
I didn't totally catch him, but City Administrator Shelton, can you tell me what Chief Caven said?
I'm not able to interpret exactly what he said, but I think he's logging out and logging back in. He's in temporary quarters, and I don't know what type of connection he's on. But as long as his report comes at the end, he should be okay.
Okay. All right. And looks like we have Lori on the call. So we can start the process here. Welcome to the Police, Fire, and EMS Commission, April 27, 2021 meeting. We usually, I don't know if Chief is there. He does a roll call.
I'm back on, Mr. Chairman. Sorry about that. I had connectivity issues.
Okay. Can you do a roll call real quick?
I absolutely can. I can't see everybody on this go around, everyone, because I'm working off my iPad. So I'm just going to call everybody's name and try to look for you on my screen.
And I'll help you, Chief.
Okay. Commissioner Willman, I see he's here. Commissioner Sanders.
Here.
Here. Thanks, Don. I see Commissioner Crandall. How are you, Susan? Commissioner Egerbrecht. Pete,
Here.
I think up. Thank you, Pete. Commissioner Karakas.
Here.
Kelly. Yep. Hi, Kelly.
Hey.
Commissioner Shenecase.
How's everybody doing tonight?
Thank you.
Did I hear him?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Jadis. Ron, are you on?
I
see him.
I see him too. Okay.
Maybe he's on mute.
Commissioner Conrad.
Commissioner Conrad is not on here, but Jadis is.
I see Ron now. Okay. Commissioner Gordon.
He's here.
He's here. Right?
Yep. Yes, he is.
And I see Commissioner Vasquez.
Here. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Great. Thanks for helping out. So the meetings from the February 23rd, 2021 meeting have been distributed. And is there any discussion? And if not, is there a motion to approve? Commissioner Sanders and Commissioner Willman seconded. Any discussion? Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye for those to be approved.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All right, we have Chief Sadler. Is he the 636 phone number called in? Yes, thank you, Deputy Chief Frazier. Thank you. So one of the items, and if it's okay, I'd like to make a change to tonight's new business agenda, and I'd like to start with the fire chief's report, police chief's report, and the fire marshal's report, and then get into the chair report with the Aldermanic update, because that's really where we've brought City Administrator Mr. Shelton in to go over the fire EMS task force. It's where a lot of our time is going to be spent, as opposed to go through the large stuff and then rush through the other stuff. So if everybody's okay with that, Chief Sadler and Deputy Chief Frazier, if you want to go ahead with the fire chief's report.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd love to. Just to follow up from the previous meeting, I know Chief Sadler had indicated we're going through some captain's testing, which has been completed. And we have promoted one of our employees, John Craig, to training captain. So if you see him out on the streets, please congratulate him on his new position. In addition, we had a new aerial truck that is approaching completion, and it's scheduled to be done in mid-May, with our guys going up to do the final inspection about that time, with delivery anticipated in the 1st of June. And the anticipated in-service date will be probably the 1st of July. So we'll be looking for that new aerial truck. We have started our spring fire live training exercises at our training center with our mutual aid partners of Ladue, Frontenac, Rock Hill, Olivet, De Pere, Afton. And we have the pleasure of beginning our fiscal year 20 audit today. So we're in the processes of that. And outside of that, just let the commission know that down at our training center, we're starting a concrete replacement project, which will be pretty busy and impact some of the training down there beginning in May. But outside of that, that's all we have to report from the fire district today.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Deputy Chief Frazier? Seeing none, thank you for your report.
Thank you.
We're going to be moving into the police chief's report. Chief
Thank you,
Kingdom.
Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody's enjoying this beautiful weather. I can't let West County and Deputy Chief Frazier outdo the police department, so I'm just going to let you know that we did take delivery of a brand new Dodge Durango squad car. It's been fully striped, and it'll be ready for service in about 3 weeks. So I know that's not on my agenda, but I can't let Deputy Chief Frazier get away with his announcement of his ladder truck. So we just have a squad car. So moving on, number one on my agenda, the renovation update. Last week, the command staff and detective bureau were relocated throughout the municipal building. I think Mr. Shelton would agree. We are still trying to settle in a little bit in all the different spaces that we're in. I'm in the far back corner, which I think Mr. Shelton arranged on purpose, so I'm not next to him anymore. But the renovation started yesterday, and I will tell you they're progressing rather quickly. There's significant items already been taken care of. The noise is going on, as any remodel would do, but we are absolutely excited for it to be completed. And the projected completion date is the last week of May, first week of June. Once that's done, I will make sure that all of you get a tour of our new remodeled police department. I think you'll all appreciate it, just like we will. I'm going to be skipping item number 2. Lieutenant Wilkie is joining us this evening. He is our marketing and recruitment coordinator. I'm going to let him take control of number 2. I'm going to skip to number 3. After 28 years of probably some of the most loyal, dedicated, and committed service to this agency and to this community as a whole, Lieutenant Flanagan has officially announced his desire, and I say desire because I still have to approve it, his desire to retire effective July 30th. John will be leaving us for the private sector. And as the date draws near, I'll be sharing some additional information with all of you as I do any other retirements that we've had here at the police department. Item number 4, on May 18th, we will be receiving 2 awards from Special Olympics Missouri. The first one, I need to announce a great thank you to all of you that supported us in our fundraising endeavors for the Polar Plunge for Special Olympics Missouri. The first award that we will receive is for those fundraising efforts as being one of the top law enforcement agencies in St. Louis County for fundraising efforts towards the Polar Plunge. And the second one is for a costume award. Thanks to Detective Exline and her initiative and her, let's just say we didn't volunteer to be part of her costume idea. We are basically told by her, this is what we're going to do. And we did, and now we're going to be recognized for it. So it's a fun award for us. We're proud of it, and it brings about a big sense of camaraderie and teamwork and a big morale booster for all of us. The last item that I have, I wanted to let the commissioners know, again, because of our investigatory participation and fundraising efforts with the Major Case Squad of Greater St. Louis, we have been awarded the opportunity to send 4 of our Major Case Squad investigators to the annual International Coroner and Medical Examiners Training Symposium in Las Vegas, Nevada in July. This will come at no expense to the department whatsoever. And I will add to all of you that as being a blessed recipient of this in my past, I've attended numerous conferences with the Major Case Squad. This will be an outstanding opportunity for our investigators to get the most top-rated training in the nation, as well as develop network and contacts worldwide. So I'm pretty anxious, and I'm very happy that we get this opportunity. So for my items, do any of you have any questions for me? Okay.
Thank
I
you,
will.
Chief.
Yes.
Go ahead and defer.
Okay, I will defer item number 2 to Lieutenant Wilkie.
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me? All right, good. On behalf of the chief and the police department, I just wanted to take another opportunity to thank each and every one of you for your continued genuine support of our organization. Due to several retirements over the past year, we've hired and trained several police officers. And with the recent hiring of probationary police officer Aaron O'Brien, who's currently in our field training program, we've exhausted our current list of potential applicants that tested during the last calendar year. Bearing in mind the retirement of Lieutenant John Flanagan, we've initiated a new hiring campaign, which utilizes a multi-pronged approach to our marketing and recruiting. First, and probably most frequently, we're utilizing all of our social media platforms as well as our webpage to formally announce the upcoming testing process. We've also reached out to our department chaplains in an effort to contact the faith-based organizations for potential interested individuals. We're also in the process of taking our marketing and recruiting efforts to all police academies within our region to further promote the organization. And additionally, we've reached out to contacts on the Illinois side to further broaden our applicant pool. Finally, we're in the process of purchasing some marketing tools to create a mobile marketing station. And this is not only going to project our professional image at recruiting events, but also during community engagement events like Fire and Ice, National Night Out, and the Fall Festival. In closing, we're confident that our multifaceted approach to marketing and recruiting will continue to attract high quality and diverse people within our applicant pool, and we're proud of our hiring standards and our professional image. We truly believe our organization is among the best in the region, and as ambassadors to our organization, I'm asking that you please reach out to everyone you know to follow us on social media. A large amount of our marketing recruiting takes place through our social media outlets, and any support is appreciated. Just to reiterate, it's out there right now. I actually reposted today. We are accepting applications through June 4th for an upcoming testing process that will start on June 11th. Thank you all for your continued support, and please feel free to contact me with any marketing, recruiting questions, suggestions, comments, or concerns.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners? Okay, thank you for the police update. Board, I also do want to go on record and say Commissioner Conrad joined prior to the police update, just for that, Chief and Lori, if you don't mind. Fire Marshal Phipps, Fire Marshal report.
Mr. Chairman, I have nothing to report on.
Okay, thank you. So that leaves the chair report and the Aldermanic update. Obviously, it was a changing. The elections happened. We have three tenured individuals. One, the mayor for 16 years, an alderman for I think it's 13 or 14 years, and another alderwoman for 6 years have all left, and we've transitioned to a new mayor, and we have 2 new aldermen on board. So we have some transition going there, and look forward to new relationships and new energy. We have been working outside of this with the Fire and EMS Task Force for 10 meetings over the course of the last, I'd just call it 8 months. And City Administrator Mr. Shelton is here to kind of go over some of the options recommendations. And so to frame it in the context of the task force, there's a couple items that are happening. One is we originally got together to work on the extension and continuation of our outsourced contract with West County EMS. That was, we were given an offer by West County EMS to have a 1-year extension due to the 2020 pandemic considerations. And then, so we're still going to be doing a contract extension, but what it brought up was where are we at overall for level of service, response time, overall, public safety. Let's measure it and let's look at it today, the short term and the long term. And so, some of these areas and discussions have primarily centered around the increase in some residents and some businesses and senior living facilities in town and country over the last half a decade. And then also with regards to EMS primarily, there's EMS with some response times. And then also with regards to the need for ladder truck for some of the businesses in the area, the lack of a ladder truck. We will at some point have the West County Fire EMS, they're available here tonight for questions. But City Administrator Mr. Shelton is going to kind of go through the process. We did a needs assessment. We outlined service levels. We've looked at anywhere from 10 to 12 surrounding communities, what they offer, and we are in just a unique position of not having either public safety tax, not having a property tax, or anything with the fire district. So it's unique that we contract and we actually are kind of like the landlord tenant with regards to our fire service. So Mr. Shelton, do you want to start from there?
Thank you, Alderman. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I would echo Lieutenant Wilkie's comments. Appreciate everything all of you do, volunteering your time to serve the city. It's very, very valuable, you and all the other commissioners that serve. Lori, if you could share the screen and bring up our scenarios. Thank you. So at any time, feel free to ask any questions, and Chief Sadler, Deputy Chief Frazier, If anything in here needs clarification, please jump in. Alderman Mortland and then Commissioner Sanders obviously spent significant time going through this. As Alderman Mortland said, we did go through a variety of scenarios. We looked at the prior studies and reports. We looked at response times. We looked at station location and tried to narrow it down for some options just for discussion purposes. And I know there's quite a bit of discussion. Let's get some information back before this commission and then also eventually to the Ways and Means Commission. So I'll just kind of walk through these. And the option one was more or less status quo, maintain the existing station. Over the years, the staffing has been reduced to help us maintain or kind of keep costs down. So the fire district would recommend that we bring that staffing back up to 6 full-time. So that would be an additional expense of $300,000. And then what we've included is some capital to make some improvements to the station in the way of HVAC and some other items. So that brings us to a cost. Currently, as you'll see down below, we're paying 3.5 to West County Fire District. We have some capital expenses, 3.5, I'm sorry, for operating capital expenses of 167, the Creve Coeur Fire District. So what we're estimating, and again, these are estimates, but our annual cost to kind of maintain our status quo with some staffing enhancements and building improvements would be 4.6. Now, obviously, all of you are aware, we currently cover that cost out of the general fund, the 4 million in fire and EMS. So just to keep apples to apples, we applied a property tax rate, both commercial and residential. And so that would be, in order to get that 4.6 million, that would be 53 cents. And as Alderman Mortland said, currently, property tax rate in town and country, both residential and commercial, is 0. So we applied that to the average median home value, which is $650,000, and that would be $655 in property tax per year. Again, just to give a kind of a discussion item. The next option, go ahead.
Mr. Shelton, real quick,
Sure.
just for, I'm not sure how everybody, my view is limited. And I'm not sure if Lori, if you could take off that tools pane and then we can increase the overall size and just up in the middle, zoom in a little more, just so as we go down each one, everybody can see the options. There you go. You need to take the drop down. Just so everybody can, is that better for other people, for viewing purposes?
Better
We're
for
gonna be,
me.
okay, yeah, we're going to be distributing this. Just hit the plus sign right there, Lori. There you go. And then we can kind of scroll over if need be and go through this. So just one other point, Ms. Shelton, just as we kind of go through this. So the task force has gone through this process. They've come up with these options. This is going to both, you know, we're presenting it to Fire EMS Commission, Police, Fire, and EMS, and Ways and Means, and then we're going to be coming back to the board and the task force. So any of your input here is going to be used that way. We appreciate it. Go ahead, Ms. Shelton.
Yeah, obviously, any decision will lay with the Board of Aldermen. So the next option presented by the task force at this point is that was looked at would be one new station. Try to locate a central location. We do not have anything identified. The city does not own any property centrally located. So it would have a ladder truck. Currently, our station only has a pumper. We used to have a ladder, but now we just have a pumper and an ambulance. So this would upgrade us to a ladder truck, would build a new building for $5 million, property acquisition estimated at $2 million. We have annual capital costs a little bit higher than the other one because of the ladder truck, and operating at 4.3 gets us to a total cost of 5.1 million. in order to generate that, again, both on the commercial and the residential property tax, would be 58 cents, and applied to that median value of 650,000 would be $716 a year per household. So one thing I will mention, and I will reference it in the other ones, the question did come up about once your capital expenses are paid, and we did these at a 3.2% interest rate over 15 years, that rate could go down. And I estimated that it would go down to about 52 cents. So your cost would then, and again, it's an estimate, be $636 annually. Anything on option number 2 before I go to option number 3? Okay, option number 3 would be one new station and continue operating our current existing station. So this would be the cost building a station at 5 million, capital expenses 1.5 million. You would have a pumper and an ambulance at our current station and a ladder and an ambulance at a new station. Estimated cost for this would be 9.1 million annually, and to generate the revenue to do that would be $1.03. So the average annual cost would be $1,272. For option 3, once the 15 years bonds are paid for the capital of the building and the land, that could drop to an estimated 98 cents, which would be $1,210 annually.
Would you mind repeating that last sentence again?
Yeah, so what we're doing is just an estimate. If
Oh, you said after paying off what?
so the capital of purchasing some land and building the building. So that's basically your 6.5 million amortized over 15 years at 2.3% interest rate.
Oh, okay.
All right, so option 3 that the task force looked at is option 3 light. And this would be one new station with a ladder or a pumper only, and then the existing station with an ambulance and a ladder. And this scenario would cost an estimated 7 million, estimated tax rate of 80 cents, estimated annual cost of $988. Now, this is a model that's used by the cities of Ladue and Webster Groves, where they have one house with a ambulance and a pumper, I'm sorry, an ambulance and a pumper, yeah, and one with a ladder truck or vice versa. And the chiefs could speak much better to this, but I know there's some discussion often about, why don't you just add an ambulance? And I think they'll tell us, or, you know, at another station, so you'd have 2 ambulances and 1 fire apparatus because you run more EMS calls. I think they would tell us you need the pumper because it has more resources, and you run paramedics on that pumper to get there and stabilize, then bring your ambulance into transport. So that's 3 light. Scenario number 4 is if the city were to build 2 brand new stations, one with a pumper and an ambulance, one with a ladder and an ambulance, and we would have 10 million in upfront capital cost, annual capital of 600,000, operating of 8 million, gets you to a cost of 9.4 million, $1.07 tax rate, average cost to that $650,000 appraised house, 1,321. After your 15 years on this one, after your capital, and I put a note on the bottom just for this one, that would decrease to an estimated 98 cents as well. So your annual cost for option number 4 after 15 years would be 1,210. So then 5 and 6 pretty much go together. Again, the chiefs could speak to this one, but if we were to be annexed into the fire district, Your current tax rate would be 98 cents per hundred of assessed valuation, which would cost the average house 1,210. They have some bonds outstanding, which will be paid off in 2024, which would lower their rate to 88 cents, which takes that to 1,087 per average
I
house.
ask, who's buying the 2 new stations? Who's paying for that?
So under that fire district scenario, they would, the fire district would,
So we would not be owning them. Is that right?
correct.
But we would pay for them somewhere in there. Where's the hidden money? Because they can't do that can't put up $6.1 million for 2 new stations and not charge us a lot more for that. It just doesn't make sense.
I'd ask either the chiefs to speak to that, but that's their property tax rate, and that's the indication that they would build 2 new stations.
Don't make sense.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Shelton, if I could speak to that, is based on the property tax rate and the assessed valuations, it absolutely makes good sense. And we have the financial resources to make that happen. Just to make sure the commission is aware, when we would vote, should the residents vote in to join the fire district, then it takes a couple years to get everything done and built and constructed and then operational. So part of that first year's money, we're going to continue to operate as we currently do, but that first year's revenue basically is going to go into the construction cost and the infrastructure of 2 new stations for the community. So with that, plus our current reserves, we have the money and the capital to make it happen.
So, Mr. Shelton, how would you like us to go about taking questions and thoughts? Would it be by option? Or do you want to, commissioners, would you like to just kind of ask questions as a whole? We're open to any feedback here and just thoughts. I know we're giving you some, the end options, some of the options that the task force is looking at, and they have not made a recommendation. But from the standpoint of getting feedback. So feel free to, everyone's going to get this emailed after this meeting too, so they'll have time to review it, and if there's any other supporting documents needed.
Now, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I don't know if I have my speaker on or not, but which one of those options would take care of the response time in Ward 4, the upper part of Ward 4? Because that's always been a concern.
So the options for Ward 4, in that really the 2 response times areas that we have, the response time issues are the eastern part of Ward 1 and the northern part of Ward 4. So, Lori, I don't know if you can mute, Mr. Thank you. So the options there, and I can let Deputy Chief Frazier also comment, but it would be anywhere that we have 2 stations to be ideal, not just 1 station. So it'd be 3 light, 4 or 5, and 5 and 6 are really just combined. That's correct, right, Bob? Yeah, you're on mute too, Bob.
Yes, I'd say so.
And Deputy Chief Frazier, anything else you'd like to add to that?
Alderman Morton, I believe you're correct that it would take the 2 station options to address those response times and the service equality through all 4 wards of the city equally.
Thank you. And I didn't give Commissioner Sanders a chance. He's participated through this process. If he'd like to add anything else, Commissioner Sanders.
Yeah, to address Jim's question, The second fire station would be basically on the western edge of Town and Country, and the other one would be on the eastern. So therefore, it would create faster response times to all of our wards, just to clarify that.
And then Commissioner Sanders, is there anything else you would add that as Mr. Shelton or myself have kind of outlined some of the options?
Yeah, I mean, it's a business decision. Looking at it, I think everybody could probably come to the same conclusion as myself, being a business guy. What we need to do is make sure we take care of all of our residents in the years ahead. Obviously, there's more homes being built in Town and Country. There's a possibility of large tracts of land being turned into residential or some commercial. We need to address the situation and take care of all of our citizens the best we can going forward. Something needs to be done. Chief Frazier has mentioned, you're looking at least 2 years before it's operational, no matter what we do. It's pretty easy if you play with numbers, looking at it, what the appropriate thing is to do. I think everything's been presented. Obviously, my vote doesn't count, but on the side, I can tell you what I think we should do.
Further questions from the commissioners?
I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Egerbright.
Wondering if continued use of the existing fire station makes sense for any of these scenarios. I see most of them are one new station. Does that mean we'd continue using what we have?
So option 1 would continue only the existing station. Option 3 would continue, you have a new station and use the existing station. The option 3 light, it would continue using the existing station. Option 4 and 5 and 6 are really tied together. They're just rate differences. 4 and 5 would be not using the existing station, and option 2 would be not using the existing station.
I'm sorry, go ahead. What shortcomings do we see with the existing facility?
Mr. Shelton?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Bob, what shortcomings do we have with the existing station?
Mainly it's HVAC, but it's a big item. So there's some other miscellaneous repairs. I will say functionally, and the chief can add into this, it's not built for modern firefighting and their operations, but the main thing I would see would be the HVAC work.
Deputy Chief Frazier, do you have anything else to add?
Just to add a little is on top of the HVAC is the electrical cost to operate that facility. And as Mr. Shelton had mentioned, the infrastructure needs from the late 80s to the 90s when that was planned and architected and put together, we're lacking a lot of modern things, i.e. our IT communication servers are literally inside the boiler maintenance room, right in the middle of the room. Oh, that's right next to the water discharge from the boiler and some other things. So just those little things, I think Mr. Shelton had made reference to that just add up, and it's just not a conducive modern facility to move forward for the next several decades within the community.
So it's more the actual aspects of the building itself rather than its location?
Yes, and the location presents the issues. We know what we get today with that location. So even if you want to maintain service out of that station and do nothing further east, you're not improving anything. So the ideal and the scenarios from the GIS mapping we've done, if we can move that station to the east and have one over on the west side of the station, as Mr. Sanders had indicated, provides more of the optimal response and covering the community as a whole, rather than still having those gaps and only partially fixing one area per se on the west side versus the east.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions?
Mr. Chairman, was it part of the task force's scope to actually present a recommendation to the board of aldermen, or was that outside of their purview?
So that is part of the, after we made the decision to continue on with the 1-year extension, that was part of the scope to make a recommendation. That's why we're coming back to the commissions, both Ways and Means and Police, Fire, EMS to come back and have this conversation. So yes. Commissioner, let's see. I see a couple hands just went up on the same. Kariakis, Commissioner Kariakis.
Yeah, hey, Ryan or Bob, in this equation yet, do we have any estimate if we were to close the current fire station on what that property value would be going forward? You know, has anybody even estimated yet?
I have not.
It was discussed, but we don't have, we were going off of, somebody quoted some Zillow number. But that's something we'll follow up with.
Great, thank you.
Good question. Commissioner Crandall?
The number 2 or number 4, option 4 seems to be like twice as many things as number 2. So 1 station versus 2 stations, 2 ambulances versus 1. Yet the capital on number 2 is 7 million and the capital on number 4 is 10 million. It seems that doesn't really add up. If with only $3 million more, we're getting twice as much stuff.
That's an excellent question. So, and I failed to reference that, Mr. Crandall. So the reason for the capital is that we would assume building these 2 stations, one east, one west, could go on existing city-owned property. So we wouldn't have the cost of acquiring property that we put in at $2 million.
I see. Okay. And then who determined the price of the building to be, for example, $5 million or $7 million? I mean, what if it turns out to come out 2 times that cost? Then what happens?
So another great question. The $5 million is modeled after 2 new stations that were built in the city of Ladue and one that's nearing completion in the city of Webster Groves. And they're all right around that $5 million. So that's the ballpark. Again, these aren't exact bid. They're not hard bid, but I think they're good estimates based on what we're seeing in the market.
Commissioner Willman? You're on mute, sir. We can't hear you, sir. You're on mute. Lori, can you unmute him?
How about now?
We got you.
Okay, good. Mr. Sheldon, you said, does the city presently own any property to put these new locations on right now?
We do own the city hall property here, and we have some available space. And we also own property where the salt mill is. It would require some additional property out there, but MoDOT has a significant amount of property where the salt mill is, where we have our salt storage.
So we would still have to buy some property. We don't have the 2 properties yet.
We have the city hall property. I would assume we'd have to acquire something from MoDOT. They donated what we currently have just to get rid of the maintenance cost. But
you mean presently there is room on the city-owned property where the city hall is to put a fire station?
I think so, yes.
And is that an ideal location where the fire department has agreed that a firehouse and an EMS station should be located?
If you were going to have 2 locations, I'll leave it to them, but I believe so. I'd leave it to the chiefs.
Okay. Have they looked at outsourcing EMS like they do in a lot of North County stations or perhaps just putting in an EMS location only and not fire only? Because isn't that our real problem is with EMS and not with fire?
Again, I mentioned earlier, the model that's being used in, say, Ladue and Webster Groves is to have that additional apparatus be a pumper staffed with paramedics that get on scene quickly, stabilize, and then you bring in the ambulance for transport.
I don't understand that. you need an ambulance, don't you? Not a pumper.
No, the model that's being used, and again, just for instance, Webster Groves, they're building a brand new station. In addition, they have one station with a ladder and an ambulance, another substation, I'll call it, with just a pumper. That pumper runs paramedics, so they can put out a fire or they can render first aid. But if you're just in an ambulance, you can't put out a fire.
Yeah.
But isn't that just kind of opposite what we need? We need somebody to transport. We don't need to put out the fire.
I would defer to the fire experts if they would like to clarify my statement.
Deputy Chief Frazier, do you want to weigh in on that, please?
I can. Overall, Mr. Shelton is correct. If you have a structure such as the fire trucks versus the ambulance, what the city really needs is to address, they have a lot of EMS responses, as we know, and therefore, what you really need is another fire truck and another ambulance, because you have to balance that ISO equation of how does the community of Town and Country support itself with to meet those benchmarks and standards and the ratings of ISO, and on the EMS side, then handle the amount of call volume and the calls for service that you need to do that. So it is a balancing act. So we would recommend it's a fire station that would have a fire apparatus and an ambulance, and that would cover the community of Town and Country appropriately. So
I thought that fire was not our problem in Town and Country. EMS was our main and almost sole problem in EMS to respond to calls, and not fire at all. So
well, that's a way to look at it. And yes, the EMS calls do outnumber the fire calls. So, that's something to consider. But when you really look into the analytics of it and the ratings that ISO is going to provide based on what you can do for your community, they're going to look at, how many fire trucks you have to handle the necessary response and to meet the national standards for response times within your community. So.
Don Sanders, can you help us out a little bit with that? Is there something else I'm missing here?
Yeah, Mr. Willman, I think you might be, can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Mr. Willman, when it's your house and your house is on fire and you need an ambulance, so I'm just saying we need to look out for the betterment of all of our people that live in Town and Country. You only need a fire truck when you actually need it, and we want to make sure there's a fire truck there and possible to get to somebody very quickly when you need it. Hopefully we don't ever need a fire truck. God, I just hope we never do anytime. But the reason for two is better overall service. We don't want to just take care of one problem when we still have another problem. We need to address everything.
So, Mr. Willman, I'm gonna move on for a couple questions. We can come back to you if you have some more questions. Okay, Commissioner. So, Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah, I just had a question about the existing firehouse. If we go with the plan of the two new fire houses, then the property over with the existing firehouse, when they took the appraisal of how much we would get for the value, they've done that already? Is that correct?
We do not have that value just yet. No.
Okay, and then the other thing is you get the land value, and then you also have the building. I'd be curious to understand if they figured that maybe someone would be willing to buy the building, the firehouse, and like make it into something to get more money out of it. It seems like a lot to pay for it. The two new firehouses.
Most definitely to fund it and look at it. So and it's currently, just as everybody's aware, we're funding this contract out of really our retail sales is where most of our funding is coming. And unfortunately, with retail sales and the internet sales, retail is the long term. It's one of the areas we've got to discuss. The sustainability of that. So we'll dig into the real estate of the existing station, if any of those options that do not continue with the existing station, to get a better idea of pricing and what that could do to help fund this process. Other questions? Commissioner Gordon, do you have another question?
No.
Okay. Commissioner Sanders.
Yeah, I would like to point out, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, but if we all looked at number 5, just for example, if we were annexed into the fire district, that would, everybody who's a resident, all commercial buildings, all residential, be assessed that, and the monies would come out of that. Okay, so all the homeowners, property owners, business owners would be paying for that. We also currently, we're funding our fire department out of sales tax. So therefore, we would have all of that money we're currently spending, if everybody's assessed this on their taxes, an extra $1,210, for example, all that other money we're currently spending would be freed up for other uses in town and country. Isn't that correct?
Mr. Shelton?
Yes, it would.
Okay. Other questions? Seeing any other? You just have to kind of scroll the Commissioner Crandall.
Why does only option 2 include acquisition of new land, but all the others would use existing land?
That's correct. And we could plug in some number, and that was good input we received tonight, to acquire some additional property at the salt mill from MoDOT.
But couldn't option 2, if we used the land from option 2 at the salt mill, then we would take that 2 million off of there?
So option 2 assumes you would have one station more centrally located.
Well, it's closed current station, and it says one new station and closed, so there would only be one station.
Correct. One station, and just relocate it somewhere central. And I don't have exact central, we'd have to do some GPS modeling. But neither City Hall nor the salt mill, I believe, according to the fire GPS, is central.
How many acres do we need to make a fire station?
Chief?
Deputy Chief Frazier?
You would need 2 to 3 acres would be appropriate, preferably on the 3 acre side. So.
And then any restrictions about a certain size of road access or anything like that?
Standard street widths will be just fine, so. For egress and ingress, so.
Has it been a thought that we would tear down our current station and put a new one there?
I'll comment on that real quick. There was something brought up like that. One of the questions was it doesn't solve the other 2 issues.
Well, then how would number 2 solve anything at all? Why is it even an option if a centrally located station doesn't solve the problem?
So there was speculation if you put it closer to Mason and 64, that they could service with the outer roads and be able to service potentially in West County EMS, with the Manchester fire station from the south, and they would get the northeast.
That half a mile, we think might be the help.
From a response time, to get up there and get on the highway and do those things. That was just one of the areas that was discussed. Other questions? Commissioner Gordon, you still have your hand up, but I'm not sure if that's just from the previous question.
I'm trying to learn as we go along about all this. So really, the cost difference between having 2 stations and keeping the existing one or centrally, 2 is always better than 1 to get with response times. If you build it, I'm not sure that having 1 station is not going to do the trick no matter where you put it. If you need 2 stations for the future too, right?
Correct.
If we're going to do this, do it right. Like the other gentleman was saying about the population is increasing and you just don't want to build another station and go, well, that was not the best idea, even with it being centrally located. And the fire trucks would actually use the highway to get where they need to go.
Potentially. So the Deputy Chief Frazier, I know that one station was discussed, and I know that wasn't one that was really being recommended, but it was discussed as an option. Do you have anything else on with regards to the fire trucks using the outer roads or the highway for access?
Yeah, in the current setup and infrastructure of the way the streets are and the travel, our apparatus can use the outer roads or the highways. Obviously, we're kind of restricted during some of the rush hour times with the traffic pattern flows, as we know. But other than that, our units are not really limited on all the city and or state maintained roads. It's more the private roads that we have some challenges in the community on.
Okay. I was just looking thinking about the response times of having one central fire station and then having two on the east and west side. The cost is quite a bit more, but doing it right. And I'm just not sure having one station would do the trick if we're growing still.
You're spot on. One really doesn't cover it. So you want to look at the other options.
So when you're driving the fire truck and you're, I'm a pilot, so we use GPS all the time, but when you're going down roads and stuff like that, things make mistakes, and then you got to turn the truck around using the GPS. And I remember the discussion we had with the police officers for the responding to someone in need. You're taking the highway. Well, if you make a mistake or the GPS is off, you got to get off, come back on, come back around. And that's driving a truck that weighs, you got 500 gallons of water. That takes a while to get moving. Is that the way to look at it?
You're correct, but that's kind of our daily business model. It happens a lot sometimes, especially on the highways and the roadways where people don't know, are they heading north or south or east or west? But yet I can just look out and see it. It's just an everyday challenge that we try and overcome.
So. I understand. I just look at the response times and the two or the different scenarios.
Yeah.
Any other questions? So we're going to be providing this document, and then we'll send this out with potentially Mr. Shelton, maybe that one PowerPoint to kind of give a little reference to the local areas. And then the request is you send any other additional comments back to Mr. Shelton, Commissioner Sanders, and myself that we can take back to the task force. Your input is valued. And, as we're going to discuss with this Ways and Means, and then the Board of Aldermen to see, this is more the long-term discussion versus the short-term, of what's next couple of years. So as we look at it. And I'm just making sure through my Zoom if there's any other, Commissioner Conrad, I see you down there.
Yeah. One of the things, the options that we see there and the cost and those proposals and so forth, I think something that would help would be to plug in some response times to different areas. I know there's a lot of nursing homes on 6440 on both the north and south part of the highway. And so if the station there, Central Station where it's located right now, I think those response times are pretty good. But if you would then move up there by the MoDOT, would that increase the response time, or what would happen there?
Ms. Shelton or Deputy Chief Frazier, you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll handle that, Mr. Conrad. If we're looking in that area of the salt mill hypothetically, so let's say that. So that response time based on our GIS plotting and mapping significantly reduces the response time collectively in that entire Ward 4 area up there on the west side. And then, even further south to Clayton Road. And so there is a marked difference by having that station in that area. So I think as your comment is that we can do some projected response times based on that hypothetical situation and provide the variance in the response times to what it's currently with one central station. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, I'm seeing none. If not, I'm just flipping through the gallery just to make sure I'm not missing anybody. Lori, can you take down the presentation? Don't mind. So, you know, the task force has gone through many options, obviously, before they come back with recommendations or anything from that. They wanted to get more input, especially from this commission and more information. So we will send you that email, review it, and if you can get back to us within the next, 2 weeks, I think that'd be very helpful for us as they take the next step and meet. Chief, let me just pull the agenda back up. So that is it. Is there any, so open agendas? Does anybody have any other open items that they'd like to discuss? Commissioner Willman?
Yes, sir. I'd like to get a feeling for how many people have been received the 2 vaccination for COVID, and that if we have almost 100% who have been immunized, can we have our next meeting in City Hall where we can all get together again instead of on Zoom? Is that possible?
So I'm gonna City Administrator Shelton. I've been vaccinated, but there's some complications. I'd like to get back in person. I'm not sure, most definitely to be able to do that. So, Mr. Shelton.
So the only real challenge we have is not necessarily the commissions themselves being able to distance and meet the county guidelines. It's being open to the public. So if you have a meeting and 10 residents wanted to attend, in order to get them properly spaced in our facility, we do not have the room. We do have some commissions who are smaller commissions who have begun meeting outside. They're going to try that. But currently, we do not have space in City Hall to accommodate being open to the public, which we are obviously by law required to be.
Commissioner Crandall?
Well, why couldn't we do it where if they wanted to attend in person, they would register so you would know how many people are there? We very rarely had more than 3 people attend, 4 people max anyway. I would bet most of them would attend via Zoom if they wanted to. But if they registered, then we would know. And then we could tell whether or not they had their vaccine. They would let us know that. And then if that's the case, the CDC does allow us to be together.
Good idea.
Commissioner Shelton, City Administrator Shelton.
Again, we could attempt to gauge what your interest would be. But as you know, when you've had meetings in the past, anybody who wants to come to any of our meetings has to be able to come. And we currently, based on Attorney General recommendations, can't just say, you didn't register for a public meeting, so you can't come. I agree with you. I've been to your
Don't
meetings.
we do that? Don't we do that if they want to speak at our meeting, they have to register? So I don't see how it's different.
Yeah, again, according to the state law, you have to be able to be open to the public. And if you have 20 people who want to come, you have to be able to accommodate them because they may then want to speak at your meeting. But I agree. I think all of us want to get back into person, and we're looking at options to do it, and we'll continue to.
Thank you. Any other open agenda items, discussion? Commissioner Conrad?
Yeah, I have a question. Is Chief Caven still
Yes, sir.
present? Yeah, I have a question for him. Maybe this is not the appropriate time or the forum to ask this question, but it's been on my mind a lot watching the news. And maybe Town and Country isn't part of this, but I know whatever happens nationally, we'll probably be drug into it. And I'm just wondering what kind of plans are made for reforming the police department. I can't see where we have one single problem, but I just wonder what kind of plans are being made.
Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Conrad, we follow all of the training standards set forth by the federal government and the state of Missouri on a daily basis. We constantly are consistently reviewing policies and procedures. As you all know, we are accredited through the state of Missouri. That indicates that we have the most up-to-date, most modern case law abiding policies and procedures in the profession at this time. We continue to hold our officers accountable. The lieutenants routinely review body-worn camera footage. We routinely review in-car camera footage for not only the good and complimentary acts that our officers have performed, but for training, identification of training opportunities as well. So to say that what are we planning for? We're not planning for any particular event. We are always training and planning, and that's why we continue to receive these accreditations through the state of Missouri. We stay on top of the most updated equipment that we can provide our officers. We meet all the training standards. We follow the national news and the local news. We're in constant communication with all of our neighboring communities. As you know, we have the MOUs, we have the mutual aid agreements. We're members of SLAPCA and different other law enforcement associations, both nationally and locally, so that we stay abreast of all the national standards in policing.
Thank you. Commissioner Willman?
Doesn't the post commission now require at least 1 hour on racial profiling per year, too, Chief?
I actually believe it's more than that, Mr. Willman. I will tell you that throughout the course of the year, we are part of the police legal system, which is a nationally recognized training system that post recognizes, and we have to take monthly online tests, as well as we attend, like the entire command staff tomorrow will be out of the office. We'll be attending some required training at the St. Louis County Municipal Police Academy. So it's from the top, from my office downward, that we're constantly training.
Okay. Any other open agenda items? Commissioner Gordon?
Yes, this is for the deputy fire chief. My mom, on a personal note, my mom was at our house and a couple of months ago, and she had a stroke, and we had to call the fire department. And the paramedics came out, and they were very professional and courteous and kind to my mom. So I just want to tell the chief that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Mr. Shelton?
Alderman Moreland, I again want to thank the commission for inviting me. I am going to have to excuse myself, but I'm going to invite all of you to join me at Longview Farmhouse until 7 o'clock tonight. They're having an open house for input on the playgrounds. So outside under the pavilion, it's a beautiful night. I'll see you all up at Longview in a few minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Shelton. All right, any other open agenda items? And if we have none, do we have is there a motion Commissioner Conrad?
Excuse me, I have one more question.
Yes,
Is
sir.
there some way that I can review all of the previous fire videos?
Most definitely. It was a great question. So we'll add a link to the previous, they're all on the website. You can watch the YouTube recordings, the links via the website of the previous fire task force meetings. So we'll include that with that document, so it'll be easy to access.
Very good. Thank you.
Most definitely.
Motion for adjournment.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Willman. And is there a second?
Second.
All right, I think I got a second from Commissioner Vasquez. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed? No? All right, well, thank you all again for your time. And we'll be following back up with this, and we'll be following back up after we get all the feedback too. So thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
you.
Stay healthy.